I believe that addiction is more, like I say, more than just taking drugs, because drugs are a chemical solution to a spiritual problem. That's why when I probably first got high, I felt like, yeah, that's the answer. Right. Unfortunately, it took a lot from me, or fortunately, who knows? Because if I didn't go through that process, I would never have had the revelations that I've had, and I would never be the person that I am today.
That's Shane Goodhew, and this is the Vegan Champion Podcast. Welcome back to the show, everyone. My name's Jason Fonger, and I'm the host of the Vegan Champion Podcast. Here we are in episode 5. It is an honor to be here between your earbuds or in your car or on your screen or however you are consuming this content. I sincerely thank you for giving this podcast a listen. I promise you are in for a treat. Today's episode features Shane Goodhew. Have you heard of Shane? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. If you do know him, I don't need to convince you about how extraordinary this guy is. If you don't know Shane, don't worry. I got you covered. By the end of this conversation, you'll know what I'm talking about, and you're likely to come away with some valuable insights about life. I would say so. Shane has an amazing story of transformation. In years past, he felt a lack of energy and will. He felt lonely and as though he didn't belong. When he found gambling and drugs, he began forming addictive tendencies towards these destructive behaviors, eventually leading to some pretty dark places. The present-day Shane, however, has come a long way. Shane is now a high-performing triathlete and works tirelessly in service to those who struggle with addiction. As you're about to hear, Shane is extremely open and articulate about his feelings, experiences, and the lessons he has learned along the way. I feel grateful to have had this insightful exchange, and my feeling is that you will be motivated and inspired by Shane's story too. He posts regularly to his Instagram page and stories at Shane Goodhew, so be sure to check him out there if you are feeling his vibe. Once again, thanks for tuning in today. Please enjoy my conversation with Shane Goodhew. Welcome, Shane Goodhew, to the Vegan Champion Podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How you doing, man? You just came from a swim, yeah?
Yeah, just came straight from the pool, so yeah.
What'd you do today?
Today I'm actually in a bit of a taper at the moment, so still a fair bit of volume. So did like 8 times 400 as the main set with some pool toys, so getting that strength in.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're training for
Ironman Western Australia. It's coming up. Yeah.
Nice, man.
Yeah,
This is your second one, yeah?
It is, yeah. Second Ironman. Yeah.
And how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, actually. I mean, I've definitely put a lot more work in this time than I did the first time around. So, quietly confident, excited, just getting excited now, really. I'm starting to see the progress within my training and, just getting excited to get out there and get it done, really.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. What was your first Ironman experience like? What was the race that you did?
Yeah, so first Ironman was Ironman Taupo, like Taupo, New Zealand.
Okay.
The experience, it was a trip, man. It was a trip because it's a long way, right? And it's I kind of went against the grain a little bit in terms of getting to the Ironman. I've only really been racing triathlon now for a couple of years, and I don't know, there was just something about, I remember when I first heard about the Ironman, I was like, it sounded impossible. I remember I was sitting there and somebody had explained to me that there was somebody sitting, in our circle that had done an Ironman, and I was like, what's an Ironman? And they'll, explain, 3.8K swim, 180K bike and a marathon. And I was like, what, all one after the other, one after the other. And he's like, yeah. I was like, wow, So when my training sort of started looking good enough and I wanted to sort of give it a go, against sort of the advice of a lot of people, I just decided to rock it out. And the experience was amazing, to be honest. Flew over there, and me and my dad traveled down to Taupo, and dad's from New Zealand, so it was cool to sort of spend time in his home country and visit some sites along the way. And it was scary. Race day was scary, waking up and knowing that you've got this task ahead of you, and I was a little bit uncertain as to how I'd go. But yeah, once that sort of cannon went off and then the race started, all the nerves went out the way, and it was just, the race was on, really. And it was, it was a real experience. Crossing that finish line was amazing, absolutely amazing. When you cross the finish line after a race like that, like I finished in a little over 10.5 hours, I think. And it was just an amazing feeling. It was just surreal. It was absolutely surreal. Yeah.
When you started to get into triathlon, did you always have like your sights set on an Ironman, or were you just doing other distances, just wanting to get into it for the lifestyle? Or
Yeah, it's a funny thing, Jason, how I got into triathlon. I mean, if you had told me like 3 or 4 years ago that I'd be like wearing Lycra and Speedos and all this kind of stuff, I would have laughed at you. You know, that just was not something that was on my radar whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, like I guess what kind of got me into triathlon, I was introduced to cycling first, and you know, I kind of fell in love with that. I didn't realize how much freedom was available on 2 wheels and a bicycle, and the community that I was with and the friends that I had around me had this idea to do a triathlon, and yeah, like I kind of jumped on board. I couldn't swim whatsoever, you know, like I could swim, you know, I could not drown, I guess you'd call it, but 50 meters and I was gassed, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, the guys that we started training together, and actually my first race was a race in August 2016 in Hua Hin, and yeah, it was awesome. It was good fun, but when I finished the race, I was like, you know what, like that's the only triathlon that I'm going to do. I was like that. I was like, you know, like I enjoyed the training, I enjoyed the experience, but you know, it was an Olympic distance triathlon, which is like 1.5k swim, 40k bike, 10k run.
Yeah.
It took me a little while to finish it. And I was like, yeah, that was great that I trained and I did that, but that's like the last one I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. And how long did that last for?
I didn't race again that year, and it wasn't until Bangsan, the Tri League Bangsan race came around, and that was a masters distance, which was like 1.5, I think it was a 75 or 80k ride and 15k run. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like something that I want to do. And that was in February 2017.
Yeah.
And that's when I got the new bike and I started training like a lot more seriously than I did the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And after that race was when I really caught the bug. Yeah.
That's rad. I think it was just before that race that we met.
Yeah.
We met in a bike shop here in Chiang Mai. We were both, I think, buying the clip-on aero bars.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we were both in there, and I think we were just, hey, you're getting some aero bars. Oh yeah, you doing buying sand? Oh yeah, right. I was doing the sprint.
Yeah.
That was my first triathlon. Actually, I did a triathlon like 5 years before that, but that was like my first sort of getting back into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember we were both grabbing those aero bars, and
I remember that day. And you know, we had a conversation in there, and I remember like the time I wasn't vegan, and I remember talking to you about veganism, right? And you were doing that thing. You still are doing that thing, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that day really well.
Yeah, man. And you were a lot bigger, a lot like bulkier.
Yeah.
You're much more.
I went through like a bit of a stage in my like sort of late teens, early 20s, where you know the people that I was around and you know the community that I was sort of hanging around with was really into sort of getting big and lifting weights and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of went through that stage a little bit. So I put on a bit of muscle, not too much. Like I wasn't huge. I was never huge or anything like that. But like I was quite stocky. I had some extra weight for sure, which is kind of, you know, fallen off me since I've got further and further down this rabbit hole of endurance sports. But definitely I was a lot bigger back then. Yeah,
I remember seeing you like in the weeks and like months, like, you know, we would sort of see each other around and stuff. And it was like, you know, especially after you went vegan, it was just like every time I saw you, I had to do a double take. So I'm just like, who's that guy? Oh man, he's lost another, you know, however many kilos and just leaning out.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, it's funny. We were just talking before this how somebody you're training with says now you're too lean for an Ironman.
Yeah. The other day, like I copped a message off a friend of mine, and she was like, you know, like I think we were talking about food or something like that, as I often am these days. And she was like, you need to get your calories in, you know, like you're almost too skinny for Ironman. And that kind of touched me in the heart a little bit. I was like, what? I was like, you know, and then I thought about it, I was like, no, I'm definitely getting my calories in, you know. It's just what happens, you know, when you train like we do and you follow, you know, like a high carb, low fat diet.
Yeah. For sure, man. I think that was probably some of the first like advice that I probably gave you. I'm pretty sure I would have said like, you just got to make sure you eat enough, right? And that's that's a mistake that a lot of people make when they go vegan. Probably the biggest mistake is they don't eat enough, because you just have to eat more volume, especially if you're eating whole foods, right? You got to eat more volume. And
totally.
a lot of people they eat the same size plate that they were eating before.
Yeah, and they wonder why they feel, you know, tired and lethargic and fatigued. It's like you got to make up for that gap, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So how have you felt since going vegan? Like any major changes or?
Yeah, definitely, man. Like so, a bit about my history, right? And I've made some pretty big life decisions over the past few years, and going vegan's in the top three. Since I went vegan, I don't know. People ask me all the time, why did you go vegan in the first place? And I'm still not exactly 100% sure what the motivation was. I knew like that I wanted to make the change to veganism, and like I was brought up eating like the main meal on the plate was like meat, right? And then there was like vegetables on the side to complement the meat, and that's how I grew up. That like roast dinners, sausages, like just like a proper like Western Australian sort of like diet. And I don't know, like I was always curious about veganism, especially over the past couple of years. And when I started hearing about it, and also living in Chiang Mai, like you see like there's a big vegan expat community here, and like I would see like guys like you and other crew that were just like pumping it up the doi and living this lifestyle, and it was attractive. As well as I started sort of like leaning into the idea more and discovering more and more about veganism, also from an ethics point of view, it became more and more obvious that it was the right decision to make. But I kept falling back. I would do like maybe 4 or 5 days vegan, and I would fall back on cheese, huge one for me, cheese and cold meats as well. Like I used to love salamis and pastrami's and all that sort of all that kind of stuff. And when I finally made the decision was after watching What the Health, actually.
Really?
Watch that documentary. Great documentary. Like if you haven't watched it, totally recommend, for anyone that's watching this or listening to this. I'd seen Cowspiracy before that as well. So I forget what that guy's name is that is like leads those documentaries, but
You mean like the directors?
Yeah. The main guy that's in it.
It's Kip.
Kip.
Kip Anderson, I think. Is his name.
That's his name. Yeah. Like I like his style. And also, from a selfish point of view, like it was about leaning up a bit for the triathlon stuff. I was like, I want to get faster, and apparently, like if I follow like this high carb, low fat thing a little bit, like I'm going to lose some weight, and that's definitely been the case. Since going vegan and actually committing to this lifestyle, it's a totally different story. Like the weight, the leanness, like that's all like a great like sub benefit from this sort of way of living. But to know that, like when I wake up and when I go about, and like I'm sure you'll identify with this. Like when you made the commitment to like a vegan plant-based lifestyle, your eating all of a sudden becomes a lot more conscious. So it's like now when I go out and I have breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is, like I know like that I'm not what I'm doing, what I'm putting in my body is not having any harm on any sort of other sentient beings or animals or the environment out there, and that's huge, man. That's huge for me. So since going vegan, as I've been vegan, I think now for like about 15 or 16 months, and it's totally gone from that obviously, the animals were a part of it, but it was more sort of about the fitness and losing weight. It's kind of, the leaf has turned over to a point where now it's like, like it is not right to eat meat. These animals are just totally, getting taken advantage of, and I'm not happy with that, So it's awesome for me to know that the way that I live my life, it doesn't take part in that anymore.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people who can probably relate to that. I mean, I definitely relate to that. I mean, I sort of had this period in my life where I was getting sick a lot, and I was looking for something to, improve my health. I was getting strep throat all the time. And at that point, it was largely about like, how do I, looking at it from a health point of view. But then, the more you learn about, the environment and what happens to the animals, it's like, it's not just a diet in the sense of like doing it for losing weight or whatever, right? The whole lifestyle comes into play. So, I totally relate to just not feeling like you're contributing to that stuff. And I mean, it's, we still live in a world, we can't be perfect, but we can try to do our best to like minimize, minimize the negative effects that our dietary choices have. And I think that's, it's attractive. Like veganism can be attractive for for people for that weight loss or for those health reasons. But I think, you know, you can get the weight loss in a lot of ways, but it's, you know, people stay, I think, more so for the ethics and things like that, you know. So
I think it's a case of like the way that I've sort of experienced it is that it's kind of like since going vegan, I've like come out of the matrix, you know, and it's like you start seeing things for how it is, and it's like one thing I love about even though it's like sad to see, but one thing that's helped me a lot with it in living in Thailand is it's on show, right? When a pig truck goes past, you know, I can remember like before I went vegan, I'd be cycling and I'd be out in the middle of nowhere, like, you know, cycling along, and then all of a sudden you can smell it before you see it, right? Like there's this big truck just comes past, and in Australia, and I'm sure in other countries like Canada, Western countries, you know, they have, you know, like walls up over the truck.
It's fairly sheltered.
Yeah, you can't really see what's going on in there. In Thailand, it's completely different. Like you see these pigs, man, and they make eye contact with you, man.
For sure.
You know, and it's just like, holy shit. Like that is happening due to like somebody's dietary choices, you know, like I'm talking like seeing hundreds of pigs, man.
Yeah.
Crammed in this truck.
Oh, you see them all the time around here.
It's every day when if you get sort of like, I don't know, 10, 20 Ks out of the city here, it's like, that's what you're going to see. And it's just sad. It's sad, you know? And so that in itself, that experience was also a big contributor to why I decided to change to a plant-based diet.
Just seeing it on a regular.
Just seeing it like how it really is, you know? The only difference between here and there is that here they don't have that extra panel of steel that you can't see it, you know? So it's like, yeah, man.
For sure. Yeah, and that's why you know, you've been to a couple of the Cuba Truth events, and that's what we try to do there, right? Is we bring what's happening out by just showing, you know, footage from animal agriculture, and so that people can hopefully see that and have that experience, because not everybody's going to get out and, you know, cycle out in the countryside. A lot of people just sort of stay in the city, and even people who are, you know, driving in their cars or whatever, it's a little bit different when you're actually, you know, you're on a bicycle and you can actually smell it and like make eye contact with you know, the pigs or the chickens or whatever it is. Yeah, man. Well, yeah, I gotta say, I remember, when we met and when you said that you were like interested in the vegan thing, that really got me stoked, man. Because I was like, you know, I'm always interested, you know, to talk to, like, I love talking to people about veganism, obviously, and it's like makes me feel so stoked about life when I just meet people who are interested in it. And I mean, what before that, like you said that there were a few sort of seeds planted along the way. Like, what were the early sort of, you know, things that got you thinking about veganism? Because you said, you know, for a bit, even before we met, like what were the things? I mean, before in Chiang Mai, you said you saw some of the, you know, people riding around and athletes and stuff like that. Yeah. Was that your first exposure? Where was your sort of first?
I mean, like, I've been blessed in the sense that I've always had quite an open mind. And, you know, like I can see things for how they are, you know, some of the time. And in the case of like, of veganism versus, you know, eating animals, it was quite obvious to me that, you know, when I first started looking into it, that we didn't have to eat, like, you know, the flesh of animals in order to survive and to thrive, right? It is literally comes down to like human, you know, taste, basically, right? It's like they want to people want to enjoy the taste of an animal, you know, like.
Well, a lot of people don't know that though. A lot of people do think they need it.
They do. Of course that, you know.
But when you do look into it.
Exactly, that's the case, you know, and that's where I'm at today. It's like, that's like, that's facts, you know. Because I've seen that in people like you, I see that in people like me, I see that in all, you know, the whole vegan community, all the people that I know that are thriving as vegans, and not just like I say, not just surviving, but thriving, you know, kicking ass with a vegan, you know, diet and lifestyle. So in the early days, I don't know, it was you know, I do believe in things happening for a reason, you know, and like there were some influences in the early days, like things like you know, just the odd like video that would pop up on Facebook, or things like what we show at the Cuba Truth, right, where you it's like click to uncover this video, and then you watch the video, and it's just the reality of what's happening in the slaughterhouse. That kind of stuff, you know. Also, you know, the pigs were a big one for me. I can remember seeing them early on when I first moved to Thailand, you know, back 15, when I first started cycling. I can remember like I did a really long ride, like pretty much straight away when I first started cycling. I cycled from Chiang Mai to Chiang Rai, and that many pig trucks past me. And I can consciously remember that like being a moment where I was like, don't really like the look of that. That stinks for starters. And if I'm not enjoying that for the 4 or 5 seconds that truck's going past me, imagine what those animals are feeling they're probably going from Chiang Mai to Chiang Rai, which is like a 3 or 4 hour drive, right? So that's going to be horrific for them. And like I say, like the influence of some of the people that are here, like yourself. I can remember meeting you, that time in Velocity, and then, creating like a good friendship with you since that time, and just seeing the way that you go about things as well. And also, people like Tamo, who's a local cyclist here. I can remember when I first started cycling, first time I got Strava, someone had tagged me in this ride that this guy did that I didn't know who he was, and this I might get this wrong, but it was something like 500k ride with 10,000 meters of elevation. So he knocked out like the Rafa Festive 500, which is like a ride you do between, you clock up 500Ks between Christmas and New Year's, I think. You get so you did that in one ride. This thing, I think it's called like Royal Rollers, where it's like you get 10,000 meters of elevation in one ride. And I can remember like reading this detailed post that he'd connected to it, and it was just about smashing fruit. It's just like, and I stopped here and I ate like a kilo of this and I ate like this much and I drank this, and it was just completely plant-based. And I'm just like, and that thing that he did, that ride was incredible, and it was just like, wow, these people are really kicking ass on this diet. And I hadn't been exposed to that before. So there was a lot of influences, like I was definitely influenced by a lot of the people that were around me and some of the stuff they were doing, as well as just figuring it out for myself based on what I was seeing.
I think that's definitely something that there's a new documentary coming out. I don't know if you've heard about it, the Game Changers. Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
So that's going to be it's been in the shoot for like quite a while.
Yeah.
I first saw the trailer for it, like it seems like it was over a year ago, but yeah, it's a documentary. Just basically, it's all about these amazing plant-based athletes, super, super high level performing plant-based athletes. And it's all about that, like the athletic advantages of going plant-based, and I think that there's not really a documentary out there like that, but just based off of like what you're saying about how that can be so inspiring for people to see like that. Like we have the documentaries about health, like for health's sake. We have the environment and the ethics, but we don't really have like anything
that's like, hey, this is what, like all of this is really good to take care of, but this is what happens when you make the change.
Yeah.
And this is what's possible.
Yeah, for sure. And like to the extreme of like athletic performance, right?
Absolutely.
Of like really, really high level. Because a lot of people, it's the opposite, right? It's like, oh, the vegans, they're skinny, they're, you can blow them over or whatever.
Yeah,
but
like hippies that like hang out in parks and like, I mean, like, it's the stereotype. Don't get me wrong, there are vegans out there like that, but there's also vegans that wear suits and go work corporate jobs. There's also vegans that
all kinds
do triathlon, it's just like, it's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really good and really inspiring for people to see like just what you can do. And I think like that's a big reason of why I race, like why I do triathlon, so that I can show up at races, do as well as I possibly can.
And you kick ass in them as well,
Sometimes, sometimes.
Most of the time.
Oh man, we recently went to Kanchanaburi to do. That was my first half Ironman, which wasn't really a half because the bike got shortened. But anyways, that was really super cool.
It was awesome fun.
And yeah, that was great. We went with Boy and Rob and
Sheldon.
And Sheldon. Yeah, that was sick. That was an awesome experience.
Yeah, it was, man. Yeah, I really enjoyed. It was cool because I can remember like having a chat with you and Robin before, because all of us train quite hard and a relatively fast age group triathlete. Competitors, and we spoke about sort of being the top 3 on the podium, right? And then that kind of happened, manifested. Like it was awesome. I can remember it was cool for me because I can remember coming out of the swim and having probably like a minute or two on you guys, and then you guys just came flying past me, and I was like, I'm hanging on to Jason. I can remember just saying that. I was like, I'm hanging on to him for this ride, and it was just cool to sort of race that race with you guys, and be quite close to each other on the run and then be on the podium together, right? And it was just that's what's up.
That was super fun because I didn't really know Rob before we went on this trip, because we all went down together. We flew down, took we got like a van out from Bangkok out to Kanchanaburi.
We just about didn't though. He was like up.
We just about didn't. Yeah. We were waiting on downstairs is the arrivals and upstairs is the departures, and for whatever reason the driver was waiting at the departures
for a long time.
Anyways, but we ended up making it. And so I didn't know Rob, but Rob is actually, he competes professionally as a mountain bike racer.
Yeah, he's like a cross country mountain bike racer, professional in Germany.
Yeah,
very very strong cyclist.
So I'm going into this. I'm thinking like, oh man, like this is going to be tough. This is going to be really tough.
Yep.
And you said he's a strong swimmer as well.
Uh-huh.
But we did one swim session with him, and I think he was like a bit. He did like a 4-day. He did the Masters Tour of Chiang Mai.
He did.
So it was right after that, and I was kind of like, I don't know. Shane says he's a really good swimmer, but like he was kind of didn't have maybe the best day when we did that swim together. But I wanted to swim with him. I was like, I'm gonna try to swim with. Like I wanted to swim with you too, but then you just took off way too fast. And then coming out of the water, I remember. He was behind me a little bit, but then out of transition, he just like...
Yeah, he can ride a bike.
Yeah, he took way off. And we were with him for, I don't know, 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think I could remember like screaming at you like, don't lose him.
Yeah, and then he was off. But I want to know, like, because your swim, you said before, right? How when you were getting into you got into, I think, it was running first, yeah?
No, cycling? It was cycling. So I'll talk a little bit about like the cycling, because that...
Yeah. I remember you said that I saw a post or something where you said that you got into running to quit smoking.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was in rehab I had a really bad addiction problem for a few years.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So,
but for the cycling, if you wanted to just...
So the running came first, right?
Yeah.
Running
did. Okay.
Running was a way for me to quit smoking.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a hobby. It wasn't like I wasn't interested in it, but it was just a really great way for me to, every time I felt like a cigarette, I would either drink a glass of water, or if the timing was right and it was possible for me to like go for a run, I would go for a run, right? And it was really great using those sort of tactics, as well as, positive affirmations and that kind of stuff. And this was when I was in treatment. I was able to kick cigarettes. Mm-hmm. When I moved on from treatment into like a sober house, like a secondary care facility, there was a guy that ran it named Marcel. Legend of a guy. He's like, I think he's about 60. Yeah, he just turned 60, I think. Swiss guy, just biggest heart you've ever come across. Full of love. Amazing guy, massive mentor for me, really special person in my life. And he's a cyclist. And he would always say, come on, Shane, you need to come for a ride with us. Like, that's my best sort of Swiss accent. And I'd like, nah, like I'm not really into it. Like I don't really want to wear that stuff. I don't really want to ride a bike. And he's like, no, you need to come. So I committed and I went for a ride with him, and we rode from Chiang Mai to Lamphun and back.
Oh, nice.
So it was like an 80K bike ride, the first time I've ever like done
your first ride.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm there, like I'm wearing like Nike trainers and Adidas shorts, because God forbid I'd put a pair of bib shorts on, and we rocked it out. And I got back and I was like, you know what, that was pretty cool. Like I quite enjoyed that. And so that's where it started. That's where the cycling started. And as I sort of shared before, then those guys had the idea that we should do a triathlon and blah 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 blah.
But you didn't have the swimming background.
No.
But you're from Australia, so I mean,
yeah, I know. So it was really against the grain for me. Like I can remember as a kid, like
you weren't really going with.
Oh, like so like I don't know if you have this in Canada. You probably do, but like mandatory swim lessons, right?
Well, I mean, I don't think we do now.
Okay, so
that's what I mean. Like in Australia, swimming is like. I mean, everybody swims.
Most Australians are like fish, man. I can remember as a kid, like losing a lot of self-esteem over that shit because, I'll tell you like this story. Like I forget. I don't know how they graded these days, but back then it was like 1, 2, 3, 4. Those were the groups you were in. Yeah. And I can remember being in like year 2 or year 3, and I'd got into like the 3rd grade, which is when you start like bubble blowing and all that kind of serious stuff.
Serious stuff,
yeah, man. And my sister's 2 years younger than me. So she was like in year 1. So like. Grade 3 is a pretty good, grade to be in level 3. Mm-hmm. I failed it the first time, so it's like, all right, so I'll go next year. And then, slowly but surely my sister caught me, and by this stage I'm like in year 5, still in like group 3, and like, all my peers and stuff are like up in 6 and 7 and learning how to do like breaststroke and this kind of stuff and bilateral breathing, which is something I still can't do. And
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you always breathe to the
left.
Okay.
Yeah. And then my sister overtook me. And I can remember getting that certificate back and I'd failed again and I just had a tantrum, man. And I just like ripped that shit up in front of my mum and I was like, I'm not doing swimming lessons anymore.
Wow.
And so yeah, swimming did not come naturally to me at all.
So what were you feeling when, I mean, you'd sort of got into running, getting into cycling. People are throwing out these ideas to do a triathlon. And then you sort of have to confront this
this previous like a small T trauma, right?
Yeah.
And and it happened again. So we're at the pool and like I'm with a bunch of people who I was living with in this sober living place, and they're all of a sudden like they're learning how to swim, and they got swimming lessons from teachers, and we all sort of started at the same level, apart from one guy who was quite good, and they all took off on me, you know, and but for me it was just like I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to quit swimming. I wanted to do this triathlon, which was a 1.5k swim. And in order to do that, you need to be able to swim 1.5 kilometers straight, right? At the smallest distance. And so I kept pushing at it. And I was swimming today and I was thinking about it actually. Today I did a session where I had like my legs tied together and I had a pool buoy and paddles on. So it was like a strength-based session. And I was swimming way faster repeats than what I used to swim like my 100 meters just totally, you know, unaided. No toys, no sort of handicaps. And it was just like, wow, you know, like if you put the effort and the energy into something, you know, like, and it's been a story that's kind of come into my life time and time again. If you put the energy and if you put the effort into something and you're willing to see it through, like you will get there, you know. And that's what happened with my swimming. It was like, I can remember when I did my first 1.5k swim, I've actually got an archived Instagram post where I've written a blog about it on sort of like at the bottom of one of my posts, and amazing feeling. I think it took me like close to an hour, you know, maybe a little bit longer, sort of around at the hour mark, and all my sort of peers that I was with had to wait for me and stuff like that, you know, and it was just like, you know what, like I just ran 1.5k and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Got it done.
Yeah, man. And then, you know, from there, that sort of the swimming stuff, I never got lessons here. I just sort of
I was going to ask, how did you, I guess you would have had sort of a foundation from the stuff that they told you when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You could probably remembered some of that stuff, but you didn't work, recently, like in this recent development to do the triathlon, you didn't reach out to get a coach or like,
no.
did you maybe watch some videos online or anything like that?
Not really, man, to be honest. I just got in the pool, you know, and because, you know, cycling I love still. Running was also difficult for me because as you mentioned, like I had a bit of extra sort of like, I was quite stocky, you know, like I'm like 5'9", so not super tall, but I was kind of like, you know, a little brick sort of thing walking around. So running was difficult too because whenever I'd start, you know, my heart rate would get super high. But swimming I didn't enjoy. I did not enjoy it. I would, you know, I have a triathlon coach, and I was working with the previous coach of this one, and you know, he motivated me just to get in the pool. It's just like, you know, like you need to just get in the pool. And then eventually, I guess I kind of found a way for me to swim, you know, and then I found a way for me to swim a little bit faster and a bit more efficient. And then recently I actually had my first swim analysis done.
Did you?
Yeah, I did with my current triathlon coach when I was in Bangkok, sort of around August. So,
and what did that consist of?
He placed like a bunch of cameras in a pool, as well as like overhead GoPro stuff, and basically he analyzed my swim, gave me a bunch of tips, and compiled it into a video where he kind of voiced over. And as I was swimming, he's like, see what you're doing here, blah, blah, this and that. And I've put that energy, and not that energy, those tips, like into my swimming, which has taken my energy because I'm not the kind of person, when I first started swimming lessons wouldn't have I wouldn't have had the patience for it. That's just the truth. I just wanted to get in there. It was hard enough for me to get to the pool, let alone to watch a YouTube video, or you know what I mean? Does that make sense? It was super hard for me to
show up
to get up and get in there. So just getting in there and getting it done was okay. Because I didn't necessarily see myself as like a competitive age group triathlete back then. I just wanted to get the swim done.
How did he when you got your swim analysis done, as it was in the analysis when you went in there? Did he say, "Oh, your stroke is terrible," or "Your stroke is actually all right"? I mean, how was it?
He was like, he was quite impressed with how my swimming progress had happened quite quickly.
Yeah.
He when I took him on as my coach, he went over like all my results and saw my swim times and how that increased quite significantly since I raced that race in 2017, that Bang Sam one we spoke about. He gave me a lot of tips. I've been working on this like high catch thing, which is super hard, where you like your elbows like high in the water and you kind of catch and pull through, and like, I don't know, like I can't really even do it out of the pool, let alone in the pool yet. It's quite difficult to do, as well as like just little things like he noticed that I look forward a lot when I'm swimming. So it's like, you do realize that the T at the end of the line is to let you know that you're at the end of the pool, right? And I already know that the end of the pool is coming when I'm like 30 meters away from it previously to this.
Yeah.
So, you know, those kind of things. And since doing that, since keeping my head sort of like down, and he said, imagine like there's a ping pong ball that you're holding a ping pong ball to your chest with your chin. And yeah, like since doing that, like I've gained a few seconds per 100 meters. So that's kind of cool. Yeah,
man, I feel like your swimming's definitely improved a lot. I remember we used to do some swims together, and like your speed is definitely going in the right direction, man.
Yeah, it feels good, and I now enjoy it. Now I enjoy it. You know, like I get into the pool is not a difficult thing for me, because it aids recovery as well. You know, like when I've had lately, I've been training quite a lot and I've been feeling quite fatigued, and I'm almost like hanging to get into the pool, you know, because I know it's going to shake out that fatigue, and especially like if I travel, like I do travel quite often, and getting in a pool at the destination, you know, kind of, it's a good like way to recalibrate. So
I always feel best like after a ride. I feel good, you know. I mean, after doing a ride or a run, you know, you feel. It's not the same as after a swim. After a swim, you feel so like rejuvenated.
Absolutely.
I feel like,
yeah.
I don't know what it is. There's something about it.
Yeah,
I feel like it makes you hungrier too. Do you find that?
Absolutely. Yeah. After a swim, I get hungry for sure.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about swimming, but
I think it's just something about being like, there's very little like intensity and pressure on the body. You know, when you're running, it's like bang, bang, bang. When you're cycling, it's like you're really pushing out those watts. But when you're swimming, it's just like you're in water. You know, and I think that has a way of refreshing you and stretching you out, and definitely, like I said, when I travel and I go somewhere, once I get in the pool, reset. It's really good for jet lag as well.
Let's talk about your younger years, formative years. Let's take it back, because we've alluded to some some substance abuse that has happened in your past. And tell me a little bit about, you know, your life, you know, your childhood growing up, and maybe where did things sort of start to lead into, you know, abusing some of these drugs that you've had a history with.
Sure, man. So like there's nothing major to report about the childhood, you know, like things were pretty good. You know, like I have an amazing mum, I have an amazing dad, and you know, they both like tried to give me and my sister the best life possible. We went to great schools growing up, albeit I went to a lot of schools because I wasn't the best student, you know, like I went to a lot of private schools, and it was just based on like my mum and my dad just wanted us to have a good education, you know, I wasn't on board with it. School was hard for me. I found it really difficult to concentrate. I found it really difficult to even like socialize, man. You know, I felt a bit like an outcast, you know, and yeah, like that. I always felt a bit like a square peg in a round hole growing up. That's the best way I can describe it.
Did you have things that you'd rather be doing than going to school, or was it just the
kind of like I can remember like I like maybe sort of like years 9 and 10, like when I really started like giving up on the idea of school, like when I would like be wagging school a lot. All I would do is like watch daytime television. That's depressing. Like, you ever watched Oprah every day, like at midday for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row? Like it's not really that fun, you know. And I would rather be doing other things. But that's what I would do when I didn't go to school. It was just hang out at home, do nothing really. Yeah, there was a lack of a lack of drive, I suppose. Like I would always kind of have a bright spark. That's definitely been my history. Is like if something came up, like for instance, like an idea at school, or like if I had an idea for what I wanted to do with myself, or what I wanted to study, or whatever it was, I would like go into it at 100 miles an hour and just fizzle out halfway through. That's definitely been my history. But yeah, as far as like growing up goes, like that was all sort of like, there was something, I guess, and that's why I know about addiction now, having sort of been through it and being in recovery. It's like, it's often present before the drugs are ever involved. It's that dis-ease. It's not feeling comfortable. And then when I found drugs, which was actually quite late compared to some of my friends that were using and stuff like that, I can remember like getting high the first time. I think it was 2011 or 2012, and I can remember thinking like, that's it.
Like smoking weed or with
no, like with hard drugs.
Hard drugs,
yeah. Like I'd been stoned a couple times, but weed wasn't really my thing.
Yeah,
to be honest. The place where I grew up, a lot of people smoked weed, like just like anywhere really, but kind of like ice, meth was a big thing, and I got pretty caught up in that.
At what age?
At around sort of like 19, 20.
Okay.
Yeah, so kind of like I definitely, gambling was huge for me. I definitely had like some gambling issues for sure, as well as like, some alcohol stuff, but just everyone that I was hanging out with partied like an animal, like weekend fights and getting so wasted, who could get the most wasted, all that kind of stuff. That was just the norm for the kind of crowd that I hung out with, Gambling definitely had me, like I can remember when I was like 18 or 19, only a couple of years after, like when you're in Australia, 18 is the legal age to gamble. Like I got self-exclusion from the casino, which is like when you go into the responsible gambling center and sign paperwork and blah, 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 this and that. And it was like a big deal, right? Because I'd lost tons of money. Because I had a great job. I used to work offshore, oil and gas construction, like high income job, especially for like somebody that's in their late teens. And I would just gamble it away. I would just get back from my swing. I would like, act like a baller, act like I had even more money than what I did have and just gamble it away. Gambling was huge. So that definitely the addiction was there, long before the drugs came along. But I first picked up sort of later on, sort of 19, 20.
So when you were in high school, you weren't obviously, like you said, you weren't that into school. You weren't, you were, skipping class and stuff like that, but you weren't using hard drugs at least yet.
No, I wasn't using any drugs.
Any drugs?
No.
So you were clean through high school?
Clean through high school, yeah. I was kind of scared of drugs, to be honest, I guess that fear had been put into me growing up. I was scared of them. I never used. I definitely had outlets though, like innocent ones like skateboarding. Like I was an avid skateboarder growing up until I had a really bad crash when I was like 13 years old, where I had like brain hemorrhages and it was really, really hectic. So that kind of, the skateboarding fizzled out after that. And then it was like other things, like I started hanging out with the wrong crowd and got into graffiti and that kind of stuff. And that was kind of a big thing in Rockingham, Western Australia, where I grew up at the time. And then, I got in trouble for that. I had a lot of police trouble in my sort of juvenile days and in my sort of early adulthood. Lots and lots of time wasted at court. I was the kind of person that would get, like I had friends that had done super bad stuff but never got in trouble. But if I'd like jaywalked or something like that, I would get done. That's just the way. That's just my luck was.
You're always getting caught.
I was always getting caught. So like so much money, so much time, so much energy wasted, and so much pain for me and for like family, right? Because negative behaviors don't just have negative consequences on the individual that sort of acted that way. It's also it's a ripple effect through families, and that's what I see true, not just with addiction. Obviously, it's huge with addiction, but also with anyone that's sort of behaving in a way that's detrimental.
So you had your outlets throughout high school.
Yeah,
misbehaving, getting caught. And then you said around 19 or 20, so that would be pretty much just when you've gone out of high school.
Left high school when I was like 15, 16.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't graduate?
Didn't graduate.
Okay.
No.
And so what did you do with your time? Just
not much.
graffiti and skateboarding?
Yeah, man. Basically, like I had like, like I say, like my family was, very, very, they wanted me to do well. So a lot of job opportunities, I worked in my stepdad's supermarket and that kind of stuff and did a lot of that stuff. And also, but never for longer than like a month or two. Because I just didn't have the energy for it. Like I don't know the energy. I didn't have the will. I didn't want to work. I just wanted to, I don't know. I wasn't in a good headspace. I guess looking back now, from with where I'm at today, like I look back on those times and I have a lot of compassion and I guess pity for that young guy, like, cause yeah, like there's an easier way to do things than to live life that way. And then, that sort of, those stages sort of led one thing after the other. And I ended up, picking up hard drugs straight off the bat, getting high on some pretty hard stuff.
When did you start working on the oil rigs?
I got my first job offshore when I was 18.
Okay.
So dad worked in that field. He helped me out, got me a job. Kind of let him down, to be honest. Like I would go out, I would work, like I would work all right, but then a couple of times, like again, like, in trouble with like police and stuff like that. And I had to kind of come back and face that stuff and miss work. And then when I combined addiction, like my drug use with offshore work, I would kind of like come back after 3 weeks of work and then go into like 3 weeks of party. Well, let's not even call it that, because that just kind of takes the edge of it. And it wasn't partying; it was like suffering, right? It was disgusting. Were
you using when you were on the?
No, I would never. I would gamble online, but I would never use out there.
Okay. Is that a conscious choice, or like just you couldn't find a way to do it?
You couldn't do it. I mean, you hear of the odd guy that would like inject an orange with vodka and eat it or something like that. Like because it's completely total ban out there. No drinking, no alcohol,
right?
No drugs. And if you got caught, you don't want to lose a job like that,
right?
So but then I would come back after those 3 weeks and it would just be on. It would just be on
binging,
just every day, every day.
So what was tell us like the first experience you had with, I mean, so you didn't really use, I mean, a lot of people say that marijuana is like that gateway drug, right? Yeah. So did none of that, or was it just straight?
I think to be honest,
think you said you got high a couple times.
I got stoned a couple of times, but most of the time, to be truly honest, Jason, just to put it out there, it was like, it was all to fit in, man. It was like, the people who I was hanging out with and the people who I consider really good friends and the people who I wanted to keep considering really good friends started doing that stuff. And then, it's what happens is when you're around it enough, you become desensitized to it. And you see that a lot, especially with, even families of people that are suffering from addiction. Eventually, when they first hear about it, it's a massive deal, but over time, sadly, you can just become desensitized. And that was definitely my case. Like I would always say no. And eventually I was just like, you know what, fuck it. Let's give it a go. And I can remember the first time vividly. I remember it, and I often talk about it in, when I speak about, my story, when I share with other people, earlier recovery and that kind of stuff. I can remember taking that hit and looking at the implement that I'd used to sort of get high. And I can remember thinking like, this is going to cause me a lot of problems. Because it was like the question that like I've been asking my whole life was just answered without even knowing that I was asking the question. I felt like I felt okay. Like I felt comfortable. Like for the first time in what felt like forever, I was able just to be like, and conversations were awesome. And it was like synthetic spirituality. It was just like I could talk to someone for hours and hours and hours about someone who I didn't even know, and the next day I was like, what the fuck was I talking to that guy about last night? It was. And
that's the first time you used
ice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big epidemic in Australia. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. I mean, to my knowledge, that was not really something that is, like there's not a lot of that in Toronto, as far as I know, like where I grew up. I never was really exposed to it, or I never really knew. I might have heard of the odd person or whatever, but I have heard that, Australia, it's like it's
huge. It's sad because, it's like I say, it's so like normalized now that kids are having their first pipe instead of, like their first drink or their first bong or whatever it is, don't get me wrong. I haven't lived in Australia for like over 3 years now. So maybe things have changed a bit, but definitely in those days, it was like that, like it was like everyone was using. Not everyone, but like,
what is the effect like that first time that you got high with ice? I mean, could you describe like the feeling? What is the feeling like?
It's hard to explain, man. You know, like I don't really want to go too much into detail about it, just in case anybody that listens to this is in early recovery, and I don't want to trigger anybody, you know. But like, it's like you just pretty much supercharges you, you know, like you're just awake, man. And
so you, like you said,
it's not like LSD or like ecstasy where like you go on some trip or in some euphoric sort of land. Like you're like aware, you know, at least in the first like few months, whatever it is, you know.
And you said that immediately you knew.
I did, yeah.
This is going to be.
I was like, okay, like this is what everyone's doing this thing. But I thought I was different as well. Like everybody does when they first get high, and anyone that's an addict, no one picks up a drug, no matter what the drug is, and says I'm going to be an addict after this. Everybody has some sort of rationalization or some sort of denial on that first try that they think that they're special and different.
Right.
Always, and I'm no different. I definitely thought, all right, all these guys around me, like, are messed up, but I'm not going to get messed up because I've got a job, because I've got a good family, because I've got money, because I've got a car, because blah, 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 all this shit, you know? And the case was that, you know, I was just like everybody else.
So you were sort of rationalizing to yourself that you could start using this substance and like remain using it, or did you the first time that you tried it, you're saying I'm just experimenting? Like what was the?
I was just like yeah, like I'll do it once.
Yeah,
I'll do it once, you know, and then the next time it was like I'll do it twice.
Yeah,
you know.
And how quickly did that? Sort of
it escalates
snowball?
quite quickly, you know. Like I remember it started out like it was like I'll only do it on a Saturday night, and then it was like I'll only do it on a Friday and a Saturday night. And then it was like, I'll only do it on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And then it was like, oh, there's this thing called Newport Wednesdays, or there was this thing, I don't know if it's still there, in Fremantle in Western Australia. It's like, okay, we'll do it on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if you know, whatever happens on Saturday, and crazy bad.
On and on.
And then eventually it's like, because what happens is, it's like, my experience was that like, in the first case, like you live and you use, you know? So living is still a thing. And then the second stage is like you use and you live. So like the using becomes a priority, which is definitely my experience. And then, so it's like live and use and live. And then it's live to use was the next stage, 100%. And then the last stage is use to live. You know, those four sort of stepping stones. That was my experience. By the end of it, I was primitive, Jason, totally primitive. Like my life was, I would wake up, and if I could get food into my body before I found drugs, that was a bonus. You know, totally malnourished, totally, like I had serious like, you know, issues with like my dental health and I looked like I had a terminal illness. But still, like somehow, like the rationalization kept me using, you know, the disease of addiction, you know, which you know, that's a fact. It's a disease. It's knowledge now in you know, the American medicine. I forget what it is, but yeah, like it's a disease. Addiction is a disease. And when I got to the end stages of addiction, you know, like my life was just about using drugs.
What were you doing? I mean, outside of using drugs, I mean, you were
sleeping. Pretty much it.
But you're still working on the
I lost that job. I lost that job well before that because of drugs.
Oh, okay.
And that was sad because you know, my dad was like was the boss on that job.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah. And I would like rock up to work after 3 weeks of just mayhem, you know, and people actually thought that I was into like running or something due to the amount of weight that I'd lost from them seeing me when I'd last left the barge to coming back on. Sad. And as I say it, like I feel sorry for that version of myself that was doing that stuff, you know, that kid, you know, that didn't know that there was a way out. Whilst also taking responsibility for that stuff as well. You know, and Dad had to let me go. He had to say to me like, you know what, like, you're just not pulling your weight. And that must have been super hard for him. You know, that must have been super hard for him to do. Did
he know what you were into?
Yeah, totally. I lived on his property. At the time, I'd always house jumped. I got kicked out of numerous houses, kicked out of mum's house. I got kicked out of like a friend's house, you know. And thank God that these people did this, you know, because it helped me hit my rock bottom. If I had been given like, you know, places to stay and a free reign without severe consequences, who knows where? Who knows about definitely, but maybe I wouldn't be sitting here today chatting to you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, dad kind of knew what was going on. That was about November, I think, 2014, sort of like October 2014, I lost that job. So I had this addiction that was based on earning this kind of money, you know, and then all of a sudden
you're still gambling as well.
Gambling online, yeah. I used to gamble on this thing. It's not around anymore, but yeah, you used to be able to go to like the petrol station and get like a you know, you used to be able to get like prepaid phone credit on a slip. Do you get that in Canada?
I think you can get it here in Thailand.
Yeah, so like in Oz, you could get like, basically you go there, you got like, can I get a $29 like Vodafone deal, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But you could also buy this stuff called Ucash, which was like stuff you could upload onto your gambling account. And I would just go, get high, get Ucash, get high, get Ucash, because I'd already banned myself from the casino. And I tried to get in there since banning myself 2 times, and they said the next time that you come here, we're charging you trespassing.
You banned yourself because you knew you had a problem.
Absolutely.
And then you're still trying to...
My rock bottom came to a pinnacle at the casino. But I wasn't... So like in...
Tell us about
yeah,
that.
so let me tell you about this story. So like, it's because this is when it... So like I said, I'd had this addiction that was totally based on earning this kind of money, which was great money. Spent it all on drugs. And I started doing really bad stuff in order to use like I had to use, basically, you know, like, and when I say had to, I don't mean that in a way that takes responsibility away from the behaviors, because I take full responsibility for my actions. But basically what I'm saying is that like, when you don't have money and you need to get like drugs, you do bad stuff. And that's basically what I started doing. And what happened on that weekend was I ripped off a really good friend, you know, who used as well, but you know, we had a good amount of history before the drugs, and I lied to him, and it all kind of came to a catalyst. I was sitting in a hotel room at the casino, gambling on my phone, not being able to walk 300 meters to the casino with a stolen credit card, losing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of somebody else's money.
So you stole that friend
I stole a family member's credit card.
Okay.
And I ripped off that guy as well. So like, it wasn't cool, man. It was a really bad situation. Yeah. And I throughout all of it, like there was, I don't know, like this, I'm a big believer in spirituality. Like you would know that now, we're good friends. And nowadays, like I feel like that flame is like alive in me, right? Like I'm living like my best life, you know, and like life's pretty good, and I'm super grateful, you know, to be living the way I do today. But back in those days when I was like a gremlin doing drugs every day and totally, you know, like ruining my life and the lives of those that cared about me, still throughout that process there was that tiny flicker of light, that tiny flame, you know, like a little pilot light of spirituality inside me, that sort of how can we call it, like a compass, you know, like a compass. That's a good way to put it. That still told me when I was doing right and wrong. And I can remember just the pain was heaps, man. The pain was heaps. No one, and I was powerless. I couldn't help but press that next button, you know, like upload that money, gamble that, you know, spin that wheel, do that line or smoke that pipe, whatever it is. Like I was powerless, man.
And that was your program, right? That's it, man. It was totally like that, you know, and the hardest part about getting clean was admitting that like I had no power over that, because it was hard for me to admit it, because once you do that, you finally realize by admitting you're powerless over like over that stuff, like you realize, you know what, like, yeah, like I had no control over it at all, which is hard to admit especially for like a selfish, like arrogant addict that thinks that he's got it all under control. So you're in the hotel room, you got the stolen credit card, you've got your drugs, and you're at this casino that you've banned yourself from. Yep. And you've got this,
at the hotel next to it, yeah.
And you've got this little compass inside of you.
It's like, yeah, man, what is going on, man? You know, yeah. I can remember like I couldn't look at like old family photos, man, of me, because it would make me cry when I was using.
Yeah.
You know, because it was like, I'm not that person.
So you mean now you can't look at those?
Now
photos?
I can. Now I can look at. I'm talking about when I was like that person that's suffering massively from addiction.
Yeah.
Like I guess what I'm saying is like
looking back at your former self.
Back, like when I was a kid.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, wow, what happened? This phase is
Where
that's now lasted like 3 or 4 years. Is like it's not phase.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank God that I hit rock bottom that time and managed to get my ass into gear and seek some help.
So it was this sort of awakening of this realization that your life is in a place where you don't want it to be. You've obviously done some things that are wrong, and then,
a lot of things.
And then so then what happens? I mean, when you come out of that hotel room, I mean, were there decisions made right then and there, or how? Like what changed at that? Like when you say you hit bottom,
yeah.
What is that?
I just like knew that I'd gone too far, basically, and I went home and I can remember like speaking to my mom, and I was just like, who was like involved in the process, like she's like, I kind of see my mom as like my guardian angel. She has been there throughout everything and has had my back, throughout the whole process, and has helped me out a lot. So I was kind of open with her, and I kind of said, this is where I'm at, and she was pissed off, and of course she was, and like
how much did she know about what was going on?
A lot.
Yeah.
But
you told her everything at this point, and
she like, again, like going back to that sort of desensitivity, that she'd been exposed to it so much through me, like that. That it was like I explained to her, like often, she'd ask me like, and she just cares. She just cared a lot about me, and she still does, obviously, but back then it was different. It was hard for her. So I explained to her everything that had happened, and I said to her, what, like I think I want to get some help. Whether or not I wanted to get clean at that stage, I'm not sure. I think I just wanted help to get out of that situation that I got myself in. Because I knew that I'd really gone far down the rabbit hole with that specific weekend and the build up to it. And then I kind of, next thing you know, like I was on a plane to Thailand.
I imagine it's hard when you sort of reach a bottom like that, and you're still so deep in the substance abuse that is basically, like you said, you're using to live, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I imagine that it's difficult to even try to think about getting off of all of those drugs, like to actually think about that, because it's just, you're so dependent on them. You know what I mean? I feel like, am I wrong in thinking like, that you want to change, but you're not at that stage ready to sort of really fully think about what that entails? Does that make sense? Is
Absolutely.
that sort of
totally. Like I knew that I wanted to stop doing that particular drug, and I wanted to be able to drink. I wanted to be able to take party drugs and just do like what normal people do.
Right.
Normal people. What my idea of a normal person was then. Go out on the weekends and be able to go into a nightclub without getting totally paranoid, leaving 10 minutes later. Or be able to have like a conversation with somebody, kind of like what we're having right now, like a conscious conversation where I'm not stuttering or trying to suss the person out or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I knew I wanted that, but I didn't. For me, it's been complete abstinence. That's been my process, and that was not an idea that I was open to.
I see. So you said your mom, I think I want to get help. You get on a plane to Thailand.
Yep.
And you stayed, was it the cabin?
Yeah, I went to treatment. Yeah.
Talk us through like how that all like played out for you. Did it?
Yeah, it was a good experience, man. Like treatment days are like, it's like, I don't know, the way that I kind of experienced it, man. It's like, I don't know, like, like when Hagrid comes to Harry Potter and he's like, you need to come to this wizard school. Like that's kind of like what treatment was like for me. Like I rocked up to this magical place. I'd never been to Thailand before, and there were all these people like me, and there were these like, counselors and they kind of had the answers.
Yeah.
And like every single thing I put out was disputed with absolute truth, and it was amazing. And it was like defense against the dark arts,
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was a spin out. I'd gone from being like, young Australian dude who hangs out with young Australian dudes in this little microcosm of society in Western Australia where I grew up. Next thing you know, I was put in this like melting pot of like people that there were like people from like Southeast Asia, people from the UK, people that had loads of money, people that had little money, people that had amazing jobs, people that had no jobs, famous people that, just sports people, tons of people in one community. And it was like, wow. I guess one thing I got from that, obviously apart from getting clean and getting my life together, was I learned how to help me grow into being a man, through hanging out with other people and having mentors as well. It was a process. It was a trip. It's hard to sort of articulate because it's hard to explain unless you've been through the process. But for those who have been through treatment, if people that might be listening to this, they'll know what I'm talking about. It was every day was like a revelation. Every day there was an awakening of some sort. All of a sudden, I'd walk past a mirror and I'd be like, "Well, he looks different. That's me." Went and got dental work done that I needed to get done. When eating 3 meals a day, sleeping every night. Do you know dude, it's hard to sort of. I know it might not make heaps of sense to somebody that hasn't been through that process 100% like this, but sleeping every night in the beginning was incredible. I can remember getting my 30-day, I do 12-step stuff. So I got a little key tag and it's 30 days and it's I slept 30 nights in a row, Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely a journey, introduced to, like I say, 12-step stuff. And that's really helped out as well. It's obviously that's been the major part of my recovery. And yeah, man, real journey, got to speak about a lot of the stuff that I thought I was going to take to the grave, a lot of situations, a lot of insecurities, vulnerabilities, getting vulnerable, man. What a process that is, for a ego-filled, I guess what I used to, what I kind of was a egomaniac with an inferiority complex. It's a very contradicting sort of place to be. And that was hard, getting vulnerable, standing up and being this is how I feel about this. But the growth that can come from that is absolutely huge. And I'm just so glad. And I guess in a way I feel blessed because I kind of do believe that there's a power greater than myself that's looking after me. That power sort of came into my life and allowed me to do that stuff, because I was not the kind of person that ever showed any sort of fears, or because I was too scared that people would see the real Shane, whatever that is, And in treatment, I learned how to do that. I learned how to open up and sort of bear the soul, and what a beautiful process that is.
It's really interesting to hear you speak about that, because you said before all of this, before all the drugs came in, right?
Yeah.
It's you said it was already there, right?
For sure. In hindsight, I can see it, yeah.
And so it's interesting that a lot of those, whatever it is, personality traits or just tendencies towards, like you said, being afraid to expose, your true feelings, your true self, that's sort of, what gets worked out in treatment. It's not just going and just stop using these substances, and you're good. It's really getting into the deeper causes that led into the substance abuse in the first place.
Treatment was like the school that I was supposed to go to.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Treatment was learning how to live, man. Learning how to express myself assertively, because I was the kind of person that would let things build up and then would explode over the tiniest thing. But being able to be hey, listen, I feel it sounds kind of stereotypical, but being I feel like this when you do this, Being able to practice that in a comfortable, sort of secure place.
Yeah.
Incredible. Vital stuff for me, because I couldn't do that before. I didn't know how to, being able to drop the veil of hard man or big man. That was a big one for me. I thought I was a Mr. Big, earning good money, blah, 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 this and that. And I allowed myself to attach myself to that identity. And that was detrimental for me. Mm-hmm. But being able to just be what, regardless of what I've got going on in my life, I'm Shane and that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Because that was never the case for me growing up. Even before the drugs, like you said. And I believe that addiction is more, like I say, more than just taking drugs, because drugs are a chemical solution to a spiritual problem. Mm-hmm. That's why when I probably first got high, I felt that's the answer. Right. Unfortunately, it took a lot from me, or fortunately, who knows? Because if I didn't go through that process, I would never have had the revelations that I've had, and I would never be the person that I am today.
I was just going to say, it's interesting how a lot of people who've been through recovery,
yeah, man,
they've obviously been to some really dark places.
Absolutely.
But then on the flip side, that's allowed them, given them the opportunity to go through recovery and to do a lot of this like deep, like spiritual work that happens there. And like, I'm speaking from an outsider's perspective. Like, I've never been through this, but just, from my observation, a lot of people, I mean, I don't know, maybe I was going to say are better off, but
yeah,
it could very well be the case. I mean, totally. It's not that it's a good thing to, be addicted to substances that are, potentially going to kill you.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to look at the whole picture of going through that experience and coming out. There's a lot of people who haven't been in, in that situation where they're, deeply addicted to something and need to go through recovery.
Yeah.
But they're still, people who are, maybe they're drinking lots. Maybe they're not identifying as alcoholics to the point where they need to go to recovery, but they're sort of masking, some underlying issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the people who end up going through recovery and coming out of that are like, on a way deeper, higher level than most people who are out there.
It's because it's vital for somebody that's seeking recovery to work on themselves, because if it's one thing to put the drugs down and be abstinent, there's a difference between abstinence and recovery. Let me tell you that. Because like I say, addiction isn't just about drugs. It's about you. It's like, it's a disease, man. It's like, it's hard to, it's the defects as well. It's the selfishness. It's the self-obsessed. It's the self-centeredness. It's the obsession, when I first kind of got clean, it was like all of a sudden I wanted to buy like all these Nike Air Maxes, and go shopping and wear like Tommy Hilfiger and wear all this like super like expensive, like designer shit. Obsessed, So it's like swapping, or food. Food can come in. People say like they put down the spoon and pick up the fork. That's huge as well. So it's like it can wear many faces. That's why recovery is that insight, that the introspection that you do on yourself in order to achieve like some peace of mind, so that you're comfortable with yourself enough to not use drugs again. Because most of the time, if not all of the time, people are using drugs because they're uncomfortable without them. And like I said, chemical solution to a spiritual problem. What's necessary then is a spiritual solution to a spiritual problem. And that's what recovery is. It's a journey, man. It's way, way, way more than putting down the drugs. Way, way, way more than that. It's and you kind of like I say, like today, like I'm grateful for the little things, most of the time. I can't say every day is amazing because I live a normal life.
Yeah, you're a human being.
Exactly, and you have good days and bad days. Yeah. But I can notice tiny things today that I would never have noticed before, and be like, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, like scenery or like, I don't know, dude.
We take a lot for granted, don't we?
Yeah, man.
It's easy. I mean, thinking about, when I was listening to you tell your story of, how your life was when you were sort of, at that point of where you were going to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And just thinking about, it's easy for me to like take for granted, my life. Like I definitely take my life for granted at times, and like I think it's important for us to just, appreciate those little things every day, and just the things that seem insignificant to us. If there's other people out there who are living lives, and they could look at our life we're living now, and it's like, you just
like, whoa, man, like what are you doing over there? How do you do it?
Exactly.
I can remember like I lived in this place in Shoalwater, which is in Rockingham, Western Australia, which is where like a lot of my life was based for a long time, where I grew up, and the house had a super long driveway, and as you would look down the driveway, things would get darker and darker and darker, and then you might see like a cigarette, like it's like like the red bit of a cigarette, and that would be me smoking away, like waiting for people to come drop stuff off, or waiting for people to come and hang out with me, or whatever it is. And I would just sit there because I used a lot of drugs, man, and I was too scared to leave the home. And I used to see people going about normal day stuff, from the darkness, from the den of like this super long driveway at the end. I was sitting on the couch, washing their cars, going for a jog, walking their dogs, having a conversation. I'd be like, oh man, I wish I could do that. And there was no external boundaries that were stopping me from doing that, but it was an internal prison that I had, and today, like when I'm like, for instance, yesterday I went for a long run, pretty long run, right? I did like a 30K run yesterday. And it was really fucking hard because I'm super fatigued and I wasn't feeling too well. And in the last half an hour, like I draw on that stuff, man. You know, like when I got to that last half an hour, my head's always like, oh, you know, 2 hours is enough. 2 hours is enough, dude. That's all right. Like you don't need to do like any more than this. Like what's half an hour going to do for you? You know, all that bullshit that your head tells you to try to get you to like not achieve your best.
Yeah. And you know that's the most important part.
Hell yeah, man.
Hell yeah. End of the long run.
Like, and then all of a sudden,
those
like,
voices,
bro. And then I was just like, well, what about that time you're sitting in that driveway and you just wished you could run?
Yeah.
Boom.
For sure, man. Just instant
in motivation.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not a massive fan of relying on motivation. Like I'm much more of like a commitment person, because if I relied on motivation, I wouldn't be half as fit as I am today. That's for sure. But in those moments, it's good to draw on that stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
Like I'm sure you do it as well, you know. Like
I always at the end of a long run or a race, anytime you're hurting and anytime all those voices are coming in, you have to have something that you go to. I mean,
that next locker.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of times I think about, you know, people who are, you know, maybe disabled or, you know, amputees, people who like literally can't run. Yeah, man. And I mean, you know, those are some of the most inspiring people that I've ever seen. Is, you know, people like that speaking about, and you know, I mean, when I was in Tanyapura, there were a couple of, you know, there was a woman who didn't have a leg, but she was still training triathlon, smashing it. A guy who didn't have an arm, you know, still like totally smashing it on the bike. Yeah. And you know, I have no excuse. You know, you think about that, I have no excuse. And it's just, you know, I mean, I think about what happens if one day, I mean, God forbid something happens and like I lose a leg, or like I you know, it's like you gotta seize the moment and just even like I would love you love the pain at that moment, because there's people who would love to be able to run
feel that pain.
And feel that pain. Man. Exactly. So you embrace the pain, and it's like,
it's good.
It takes on a whole new vibe.
It's good to have that fifth or sixth gear, you know, that, and a lot of the time I'd say most of the time it's not about you. It's not about me. When I kind of fall into that, it's just like, like we're doing this thing, like, because, you know, like you said, maybe some people can't do it, or you know, like, like, you know, there's people out there who wish they could be living this life, or it's just an awesome thing to have, man, you know, and that's definitely what helps me cross the line.
Yeah. And like I said before, I definitely draw on, you know, being a vegan athlete, and just I just want to show how strong. I mean, I'm nothing special in terms of genetics or anything like that, you know, but I'm just a fairly average guy. But, you know, just being able to show people, like, you know, come on, we don't need to be worrying about protein deficiency and all that.
Oh,
you know,
dude, and I mean, like, I love racing with you, you know, because you know, it's next level, right? And I mean, like, seeing you go about the way that you do things and representing, you know, vegan lifestyle, and you're always on top of the podium. You know, for anybody that's listening to this, whenever he crosses the line, like it's on the first place on the top block, and he's got a shirt that says vegan on it, you know, and respect, bro, you know, like massive respect for that, because, you know, it's awesome. It's awesome to see you do that, and inspiring.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks. I mean, it's awesome to see how far you've come, man. And thanks, it's like you know, you're definitely, I mean, you said, I think before Kanchanaburi, you know, because we were talking about how we were thinking the race is going to play out. Yeah. And then you're like, oh man, I'm like stoked that you're a factor. And it's like, man, you're definitely a factor. Yeah. And you know, like I remember you know, when we first met, it's like, you know, we were both just getting into it really, but it's like, it's been really cool to see, especially the swimming, man. You're absolutely crushing the swim, and like you're doing crazy training now. You're doing like a 200K ride, like pretty much every week.
Every Sunday, every Sunday. My coach has me doing like a 6-hour ride every Sunday. So and I'm loving it, you know, like when my first, I think I was doing 5-hour rides for a while, and then I started doing the 6-hour rides, and it was like, like I've only done one 200K ride previous to the bunch that I've done recently. And it's like 6 hours, man. That's like a quarter of my day. Like, you know, the brain breaks it down. You know, it's like, you've got things to do, man, you know, like.
Do you listen to podcasts?
You know what? Last week I did for the first time. Normally I ride just normally I ride solo, because
just with your thoughts,
just with my thoughts, and it goes all right. But last week I was like, you know what? I got these like sport sort of like earbuds, and I was like, let's try them out. And I listened to I listened to a bit of Joe Rogan, but I listened to like a 3-hour podcast with Rich Roll and David Goggins. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Dude, man, that guy's an animal.
He's talking about, he's like super overweight and he runs like 100
miles, breaks his feet.
Broken feet.
Yeah, man. And then goes all to qualify for that Badwater 100. Amazing.
He's a Navy SEAL, right? I'm pretty sure.
He was like a Ranger, a Navy SEAL, and some other like massive accolade.
Yeah, next level guy.
Yeah, man. So that was cool. And that was awesome. But yeah, like I'll do another long ride this weekend, and then I'll drastically taper next week. Next week I'm heading back to Perth. Gonna head straight down to Busselton and racing Ironman Western Australia on the 2nd of December. So
epic, man. I'm so stoked for that race to see how you do.
Dude,
what's your goal for this event?
Sub 10 for sure. Like I'd love to go sub 10. I think that's definitely within reach, unless something like seriously goes wrong. Like my training shows that like that's possible.
Yeah, I think you can definitely.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Like, sub 10 would be cool. Sub 10 is something. When I did Ironman New Zealand at the start of this year, when I decided I was going to do Ironman New Zealand, it was like let's try for sub 12. And then I wanted to do sub 11, and I said, like, I remember I messaged into this like WhatsApp group that I'm in, so there was some accountability. I was like, I want to go sub 11, and I did it. Yeah, and I feel like I'm definitely like another level of athlete than I was then.
Oh man, totally.
Yeah,
totally. So that was like March, right?
March, yeah.
And we're now November.
Yep.
And the race will be
December. And I made a few changes. Like I moved on to a different coach who's really helped me like grow a lot. Just like the previous coach did. But this new coach is super. Is really sort of what I need at this moment. And he's smashing me, which is cool.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, man.
You feel like you're sort of on that line between
100%. Yeah.
Like being overtrained.
Yeah, I think so. I think like this week's been a bit easier. Like for instance, like I'm tapering a little bit. So
well, yeah, you've just sort of peaked, right? You've done your biggest training block, and then like now a couple weeks.
22-hour week last week. So that smashed me. And this week's going to be a little bit less, and I think drastically come Monday it's going to drop a bit.
Well, that's a 22-hour week, and I mean a lot of people listening will say, "Oh my God, 22 hours of training." But I mean there are definitely people who train more than that.
100%.
For Ironmans, we got people doing 30, 40 hours a week. Some people
Huge.
Like crazy amounts. So it's a big training week. But the thing to note as well is like your training it's fairly high intensity. Most of it is like you've got some good intensity in all your sessions too.
Sure,
So that's 22 hours of like hard work.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of brick sessions, a lot of long swims. Yeah, man, it's awesome. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the after. Like, I'm enjoying the fact that like I can look back on that week and be like, yeah, like I committed to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Because like I said in the beginning of when we started talking, like I was always the kind of person that started something really strong and then like fizzled out.
Yeah, man, it's good to see you seeing it through.
Yeah, man.
I think you're definitely go sub 10.
Yeah, I hope
and
so.
I hope that you can. I mean, the thing with getting it, because there's Kona spots up for grabs.
There is, yeah. There's like 65 slots available at. But you know what? I'm not putting any weight on that yet. Like I'm not Kona fit yet, in my opinion. Like I've, as we do, like I've looked at like every age group result for the races, and like I'm not there yet. But the roll down's possible. But I'm not. That's not something that I'm putting any weight on. I'll definitely go to Kona one day. That's for sure.
Will you? If you're ready, if the roll down comes, you'll sign up?
I think I'll take it. Yeah.
Cool, man.
I think I'll take it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, dude, you get a Kona slot, you take it, right?
You got to.
Yeah, man.
All right, man. Let's leave it there.
Yeah, man.
We'll do round 2 with Shane for sure. Shane, we're training all the time together.
Hell yeah, man.
So we'll do future episodes with Shane.
Sweet.
So leave us some comments if you guys have any questions for Shane.
Yeah, dude.
And we'll catch you soon, man. Let's go get some pizza.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, man.
Legend. Peace, man.
That guy is something else, isn't he? Every time I hang out with Shane, I find myself getting a reset of sorts. He's always striving to be the best that he can be on so many levels, and his attitude is infectious. What else can I say? At least I think so. Shane wanted me to encourage you to contact him via Instagram or Facebook message if you feel as though you would like to talk with him. Shane is a qualified therapist and recovery coach. Find him on Instagram where he is at Shane Goodhew. You can also find him easily on Facebook by searching his name there. If you or someone you know needs help, send Shane an email. He can be reached at shane@claritythailand.com. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you found it to be of value, please do us a huge favor and spread the word about it. If you could tell a friend about it or post the episode on whatever social media platform you prefer, that would be a massive help. The Vegan Champion podcast, by the way, can now be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Pocket Casts, Podbean, Radio Public, Stitcher, and Anchor.fm. So you've got a lot of choices for places to listen from. You can also watch video versions of each episode on YouTube. Just go to the Vegan Champion Podcast YouTube channel. Please take a quick moment to hit subscribe wherever you prefer to get your content from. I would also really appreciate it if you could leave a review of the show on Apple Podcasts. That would be great. That would really help the show. You can find more information about me at jasonfonger.com, including links to all of my social media accounts. You can also stop by the veganchampionpodcast.com for more info about the show. And if you feel inclined to financially support the work I do, check out patreon.com/jasonfonger. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Thanks to Shane for coming on. Thanks to Tarmo Vanes for his help with the audio and video production of the show. Thanks to Matthew Chalmers for the music. Thanks to Cole La Jeunesse and his team at Planet Convert for the podcast graphics. My heart and soul is behind this podcast, and I really cannot thank you enough for your time and attention. I'll constantly strive to provide you with the best possible value in each episode of this show because the underlying theme I'm working to create here is that to live a vegan life is in itself an act of a champion, and helping people to understand why that is true is of paramount importance to me. I hope that makes sense. This is the first episode of 2019. It's going to be a good year, everybody. I can feel it. I hope you can too. Good vibes and good luck to you all as we begin this new year. Until next time, keep living like a champion, a vegan champion.